Want to run AAA games on your potato of a computer, or even an Apple? Stick around to the end of the video to learn more. I believe that Terrarians often speedrun the games of Moonlord and never take their time on their worlds. I want to change that. So over the course of a year, I will be playing on this one world, with each stage of progression being blocked until the start of a new month. I'm doing this so I can seriously take my time at each stage of Terraria's progression and see what it has to offer. So for the month of July, I've only been allowed to defeat the Mech bosses, the Twins, Skeletron Prime, and the Destroyer. Otherwise, I can make no other form of progression. This is what happened. The start of this month is super exciting because I can finally break the Crimson Altars and get hard mode ores the proper way. Fishing for hard mode ores takes far too long, and I thought my fishing days may at last be done. After all, what was there really left for me to fish up, except for maybe the Crystal Serpent? Well, this thought would soon be proven rather foolish, but for now, I'm focusing on breaking the altars. At least until I died 2 times and figured I didn't really need any more hard mode ores in the world, since fishing did at least give me a jump start. Now this also means that a good chunk of our time this week is going to be spent mining for the ores we just spawned, and frankly, it's not the most interesting part of any run. During pre-hard mode, you'd be able to get several different armor sets in ways other than mining for ore. If you're doing a mage run, then you'll likely get jungle armor, which requires you to grab some stingers, jungle spores, and vines, which is very different than if you want to be a ranger, in which case, fossil armor requires that you mine desert fossils and throw them into an extractinator. There's also necro armor, which requires bones and cobweb. Maybe you're a summoner, in which case you need flinx fur and later beeswax. Getting the ore-based armors means you're either doing a melee build or else they're temporary until you can get the proper class-specific armor. Once you enter hard mode though, you really have no choice but to mine out the hard mode ores. This isn't usually a big deal, but it can easily take half an hour to an hour, if not longer, depending on how dedicated you are to finding it quickly. But part of me wishes there was some more interesting or different ways to get hard mode armor. Only the summoner class has something different with spider armor crafted from spider fangs, though that should be replaced by forbidden armor, which requires adamantite or titanium. Now you can get crystal assassin armor straight from Queen Slime, which I guess is essentially the same as getting beeswax you then craft. There's also frost or forbidden armor, which requires special fragments, but they still require the mining grind. This isn't something I ever really thought about until just now, but if Terraria ever got a 1.5 update, one thing that I'd love to be added is alternate armor sets for each class that you can acquire in very different ways, like with souls of light and dark shards or cursed flames, and somehow you can craft those in armor. I don't know, you can make something pretty interesting, I think. In pre-hard mode, summoners go to the tundra, rangers to the desert, mages to the jungle. Granted, everyone goes to the jungle at one point or another for every class, but at least this can change up how you play and experience the game each run, depending on the class you're going for. Doing this for hard mode as well would be really cool, and I'm sure you, my viewers, could probably think of some really cool recipes for armor sets. But anyways, I had enough adamantite now for a melee and ranger set, and I decided to get the sword just for the heck of it, since I don't remember the last time I've actually used one of these. I was about to go mine some more, but then I remembered you can shimmer titanium into adamantite. Now, you can't do it vice versa, so don't shimmer your adamantite for titanium. You'll get, I think, orichalcum instead. But I shimmered my titanium and was able to get a full adamantite set for my mage build as well. Now, I took off the old palladium and orichalcum armor as well as the crystal assassin set and put them on some dummies in space. I'm absolutely going to forget these exist. Some people suggested leaving old builds in some sort of museum sort of thing, but I wasn't doing that at the start and I didn't feel like doing it mid playthrough and remaking old ones, so this was me almost doing that, but there's no way I'm going to remember these are here. One suggestion that I did get that I thought I'd actually act on was building a massive universal arena. I got some inspiration from a boss arena Cataclysmic Armageddon built, or if he didn't build it, then one that he uses. But this is going to be a big arena, so it's going to require some time. At the moment, I need to collect some pearl stones since I really like how pearlstone brick walls look, and I'll be incorporating it into the arena. But of course, first I need to put down a metric ton of platforms, and I'm not going to bore you with a montage of me placing those. Basically though, once I put them all down, I decided I was going to farm the Blood Moon. But not for the Sanguine Staff, but for the Drippler Crippler. See, in my Infernum run, I got the Drippler Crippler in a treasure chest pre-hard mode, and I thought it was a modded weapon since I never really bothered to fight anything other than the Dread Nautilus during Blood Moons. The comments, however, told me that it is a vanilla weapon, and now I want to get it in vanilla to see how well it compares to its modded counterpart, since Calamity or other mods will often buff vanilla weapons to keep up with their modded things. Now, I lost to the first Blood Eel, and I gotta say, these things are a lot more tough than I thought they'd be. They are faster and can turn sharper corners than wyverns, so I lost the first fight. I accidentally fished up a hemoglobin shark while trying to get another eel, and that thing took forever to kill, bringing me just about to the end of the Blood Moon, but at least I got a Blood Thorn out of it, so I guess that's fine. It's not the best weapon in the world, but it's nice and it's got its uses. Although I did fish up one more eel, it turned a day before I could take it down. With that done, I finished the arena, adding campfires and heart lanterns and some of the pearl stone brick wall, just starting to get an idea as to what I wanted to do. Now I just needed a dart pistol since I love the dart pistol and rifle, so I summoned a Crimson Mimic and just so happened to get the dart pistol on my first try, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, I was considering fighting the mechs at this point, but I decided I wanted the Drippler Crippler before I fought the Destroyer in particular. So I slept to the next night, and although I was ready to use one of my blood tiers, it just so happened that a Blood Moon spawned that night. I know, right? Like, whoever gets a Blood Moon when they actually want one? Well, keep watching. It's going to happen again. On top of that, the first thing I fished up was the Advanced Combat Book thing that buffs your NPCs. I totally forgot this was a thing, so that's cool. The first Blood Eel dropped nothing, the second Blood Eel dropped nothing. The dart pistol with crystal darts was super awesome at killing eels and crowd control, so that was nice. The third eel gave me a hammer morak. I don't know how that's pronounced, which is interesting, I guess, but is it really useful in any way? I fished up a Dread Nautilus next, but not because I wanted to. I kind of accidentally clicked when I saw it and didn't want to, but now I'm stuck fighting it anyways. Since I almost never fight this thing though, I was totally unprepared for what to do and ended up losing the fight. Another Blood Moon was over and the week was coming to a close, and I had told Stream I'd fight a boss, so being a man of my word, I slept through the night and fought the Destroyer with the Meteor Staff since it works pretty well on the big mechanical worm. But then I tried to dodge its head and ended up dashing into a Wraith and bouncing off of it directly into the head of the Destroyer, and in Master Mode a headshot is almost a one-shot, does like 300-ish damage, so that was a silly end of the week. First, I need to farm some souls a night so I can make the summons for the mechs. So I blew up a little area in the Crimson and collected enough to make 2 mech skulls, 2 mech worms, and a mechanical eye. Now last week I kept my word with fighting a mech at the end of the stream, but deep down I really wanted to use the Drippler Crippler against the Destroyer. I'm not sure why I decided to summon the Destroyer last time. I could have fought a different mech, but whatever. So I prepared to summon another Blood Moon, but yet again, I got a naturally spawned one, and was still able to hold on to my one remaining bloody tier. This has legitimately gotta be the luckiest I have ever been. I never want Blood Moons, and now that I finally want them, I actually get 2 of them for free. I died to the first Blood Eel though, since I'd kind of forgotten the correct rhythm with which to deal with them, and then yeah, I died to the second one, and then I lost a third time. I'm wasting a free Blood Moon at this point. But I did at least figure it out on the 4th one and took it down and then proceeded to beat a 5th, but the Drippler Crippler was nowhere to be found and the night was over. At least though, I still have 1 more bloody tier. A Goblin army spawned in the morning, but by now they're a bunch of pushovers. I did remember after that I only had wings for my melee build, so I crafted a pair of pixie wings for my ranger build, but I still needed more pixie dust for a 3rd set of wings. Now, I still wanted to beat the Destroyer with the Drippler Crippler, or at least try to, but I also wanted to fight some of the mechs. I put out a poll, and I mentioned this in my Medium Core video too, but almost everyone fights the Destroyer first, so I figured I'd have some fun fighting a different mech first, and for 1 Year, 1 World, I figured at the time that I'd just fight the one that the Fuse people voted for. Using Crystal and Cursed Flame darts, I was able to easily take down Skeletron Prime, and I would strongly recommend this strategy. Crystal darts are fantastic against Skeletron Prime, and he's actually pretty easy to take down, all things considered. There's not a whole lot to even really dodge, it's mostly just make sure you can deal enough damage fast enough, and crystal darts with the dart pistol or rifle will easily take him down in time. Now I kind of hate the twins, and they are definitely the hardest mech for me to beat, so I figured I'd just fight the Destroyer next, but again, I needed the Tripler Crippler first. Thankfully, it turned out that I had gotten another Bloody Tear from the last Blood Moon, so I had 2 on hand and was able to summon a Blood Moon the next night. The first eel of the night dropped me nothing though, and the same went for the second one. Although the Flamethrower does a great job at tearing the eels apart. I said this in the medium core video and I'll say it here too, the Flamethrower is underrated. Also, the third eel didn't drop the Tripler Crippler either. And then the fourth eel dropped me nothing, and then the fifth one dropped me nothing. I'm getting terrible drops here, but if I remember right, the odds of it dropping are like 12.5%, so I guess we're not that far off. The Blood Moon ended, but I'm dedicated to getting the stupid Tripler Crippler, so I slept through the day and used my last Bloody Tear. 1 Blood Eel, nothing. 2 Blood Eel, nothing. 3rd Blood Eel, and finally, I got the Tripler Crippler. At long last. I've been talking for like half this video about this one weapon. And let me just say, this thing is great. In last month's video, I mentioned that flails kind of suck, and at the time I thought the Tao of Pow was the final flail since I didn't know the Tripler Crippler was a vanilla weapon. There is also the Plantera flail, and some people said the Flareon and the Solar Eruption are flails, but I don't count those. Flails are affected by gravity, or else they aren't flails. Change my mind. Now, the Blood Moon was maybe halfway over, so I figured I might as well try to kill Dreadnoughtalus. I have literally killed this thing once in a regular world, and that was like over a year ago. Fighting it last time retaught me some of its patterns, and on the second fight, I was actually able to beat the Nautilus and acquire the Sanguine Staff, which is cool. I never get this thing. But now that I have the Tripler Crippler, I can finally fight the mechanical worm, and when I spawned that thing, it just so happened to spawn right next to me, and I was able to attack it while it was still unraveling. The Tripler Crippler absolutely destroyed the Destroyer and got it to almost half health in like 5 seconds because of this. Never in a million years did I think this thing would be that good. My mind on flails has been changed entirely. Flails are not that bad an option. This thing is epic. Who needs Excalibur when you have Tripler Crippler? With that said though, I had a hard time doing any real damage now that the Destroyer wasn't coiled up. It wasn't a bad choice. It still did good damage and wasn't bad at taking out the probes. But melee against the worm generally is kind of rough since there are so many lasers, so I switched to the Ranger build and used Curse Darts and the Flamethrower to finish off the worm. This would also make the Destroyer one of the first bosses I really multi-classed. I started this whole challenge wanting to use multi-classing by class swapping mid-boss battle, but haven't really been doing it that much. Sure, I guess I have done it with other bosses, but this one felt like a true multi-class, while the others felt like I switched because I was kind of forcing it. But anyways, I figured I might as well use my other summon and took down the worm one more time. Before I fought the twins though, I wanted to start decorating the massive arena the way I had planned last week. I didn't have much time, but I was able to create the first tower, which I'll be copying and pasting along the whole arena, and I really like this design. When I finished the tower, it was night, and I summoned and beat the twins on the first try, which amazes me after what happened during the medium core run I've mentioned several times already. The video should be in some card sometime before, but I'll add it in the description if you'd like to check it out since it was a whole big ordeal. This also means I first tried all of the mechs, or almost, I guess. The Destroyer took 2 tries technically, but I was hardly even trying on the first one, and a Wraith got in my way, so it doesn't really count. But what does count is when you subscribe. At the end of this year, for every subscriber I have, I'll be throwing 1 stick of dynamite on a fresh world, and I am shooting for 100,000 subscribers so we can blow up an entire large world and probably even more. So if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe and claim your stick of dynamite today. This week kicked off with adding another tower to the build. It actually took me a hot second to figure out how to recreate the top since I hammered a bunch of spots and I couldn't remember for the life of me how I had hammered them the first time. but I eventually figured it out. I also realized I had like 1 Soul of Night, so I spent a good amount of time farming for Souls of Night and collected way more than I thought I would have, but I did extend the little farming area and made a bit more user-friendly, so I guess it makes sense. When night came around, I took down the Destroyer twice for more hollowed bars since I needed a full hollowed set for all of my builds, as well as extra weapons and what have you. I also wanted to buy Echo Paint since I had an idea for improving my wizard build, but unfortunately you can't buy the paint until after Plantera, and I thought it was after the Mechs, so that was sad. I'll have to work on that next month. Now, if you've seen my videos from previous months, you may remember that I started this really big build at the dungeon and, well, I'm still not getting back to work on it. I just felt like mentioning it so you know that I know that it's there, and I do plan on finishing it at some point. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Maybe I should dedicate myself to actually finishing it before getting to hard mode dungeon after beating Plantera, which means I have like, oh wait, hold on, that's this week and next week, which probably isn't enough time unless I delay the Plantera fight. Maybe that won't actually happen, but we'll see. I guess I could work on it now, but instead I worked on building another tower in the arena. Night came just before I finished it, and I still had more mech worm spawns, so yeah, I killed 3 more of them this night, and I had plenty of hollowed bars to work with. I finished up the tower now that I was out of summons, and it occurred to me that the Old One's army was now in 2nd phase, and I needed to farm it a bit in preparation for the 3rd phase, since I can take down Golem in next month. I feel like phases 2 and 3 are too close to each other. Why not make phase 2 something that starts immediately upon entering hard mode? I guess that'd mean the event would have to be reworked to be balanced properly, but the 2 phases feel way too close to each other. But it is what it is, so I fought the Old One's army. I had to move it from its previous location though, since I originally had it set up before making my base a floating island, and now it was far from optimized. I found this nice spot on the other side of the dungeon, and it had 2 hills on either side, and I thought it would be cool to have the Old One's army march down the hills. But then the portal spawned really close to the crystal. Apparently the hills kept the portals from spawning further away, and I had next to no space to work with. I did manage to get to wave 6 anyways, but I didn't stand a chance with this terrible excuse for an arena. Crystal darts though, those and the flamethrower are great against this event, gotta say that. Speaking of an arena though, an idea I was really excited about popped into my head as the fight was wrapping up, and I just had to get to work on it. Chat also taught me that stone and stars can be combined to make sunplate, which is something I did not know, and I needed a bunch of sunplate in order to make my vision a reality, so that was epic. See, I wanted to lay down sunplate as the floor with a glowing gemspark center. I know, I'm using gemspark a lot, but I love glowing blocks and I demand more in the game relogic. I need more blocks that glow, okay? Anyways, the whole thing will be themed around Sky Island since I love Sky Islands, but I ran out of time this week to finish it, so I'm going to have to add the finishing touches then, and I sure hope I can actually build the vision I have in my head. At the very least though, I was able to create this little monument thing around the crystal, which I really liked, and I painted it with some illuminant paint since it was kind of dark. And yes, the lamps are not evenly spaced out either. I was trying to use the ruler, but I couldn't measure the number of blocks correctly since I wanted to measure 10 blocks out, but then I couldn't remember where that 10th block was after I started moving. It wasn't until after the end of the week that I realized that if I just measured in the opposite direction, then I'd be able to actually, well, measure it. So yeah, really big brain. It's the end of the month and there's still plenty that can be done, but we're going to focus a bit on the Old One's army for now. I got most of the work I wanted done with the build last week, but now we're going to finish it up. But before I start adding the things that I want, I first need to fix the sky lamps since now I know how a ruler works, and well, now this looks a lot better. Now I wanted to make these little towers, and the original idea included adding these ring things around the center of them. I was hoping to create a 3D sort of effect, but this just did not come out the way I wanted it to, so I changed course. Instead of the 3D effect, I tried adding the blue gemspark walls around them. I didn't have much hope for this idea, but it ended up creating this really cool gradient. I honestly have no idea how this happened, but I really like it. I'm assuming the lamps on the ground are illuminating the bottom and the top is not as affected by the lights, resulting in this gradient. Big fan. Wonder if I can incorporate it into other builds in the future. Maybe I'll have to try. I copied the tower on the other side because symmetry, but the little floating island I built, I didn't even really want to try to copy. Plus, I thought the asymmetry for this part would actually be more interesting. Now, these little islands may be a terrible idea since they're so close to where the portals will be spawning. It's quite possible that the flying enemies will fly into the little islands and make them harder to stop before they're well into the air. But hey, I like the build, so aesthetics over practicality, why not? No way it could really hurt that much. So we summoned the Old One's army and, well, the new island was a little too low to the ground and the portal spawned a bit closer than I would have liked. Aesthetics, am I right? But I can't do anything about it now, so I decided I'd just place most all of my ballistas on the side with more room, while I focused on clearing out the guys closer to the nearby portal. Surprisingly, the battle actually went pretty well, and I got all the way to the 7th wave. I took down the first 2 ogres without much of a problem, but then there was a 3rd ogre. I thought there were only 2, why is there a 3rd one? I tried clearing out some minions since it was coming down to the wire and the wave was down to 99%, but you do really have to kill all the bosses in order to finish the waves. So because of this, I just barely lost. At least now I know I should be able to win though. All I need to do is bring the island up on the left a bit so the portal can spawn farther away. I really did think this would have solved the problem, but then I fought the army again and ended up losing before I even cleared the 5th wave. Well, that was unexpected, but that has to have been a fluke or something, right? Oh, also I got the Phantom Phoenix bow, which is fantastic by the way, and also the weird sword thing, which is called the Brand of Inferno, which is kind of useless, I feel, but it does have a unique ability by giving you a defensive option, which is cool at least, but I'm not sure it's really worthwhile just to use as a shield. Does this sword make any sense as a weapon to anyone? But since the 2nd attempt was just a fluke, I fought the Old One's army a 3rd time, and, well, turns out it was no fluke because I died just before clearing the 6th wave. Sure, it's better, but I've really been struggling since I extended the arena. It has me wondering if a smaller arena would actually make things easier for a single player to fight the army. The main thing is that the flying enemies take up too much time. They get into the sky and then I can only hit 1 or 2 of them at a time while leaving the enemies on the ground alone, and, well, that's just not good enough. I got a few ideas as to how to improve my chances, but I didn't get to those ideas until after I lost to the army on the 6th wave once again. Also, no, I'm not removing the islands, though that could very well solve the problem, but I'm not doing it. I'm not. At this point, I've spent way too much time on the Old One's army, and I mentioned last week that I wanted to complete the dungeon build before beating Plantera and unlocking the hard mode dungeon. So I decided to put the army on hold as I went to work on the dungeon build, but then slime started to fall from the sky. I've used so much gel fighting the Old One's army that I needed to farm a bit more gel, so that's what I did. I'm sure there are better ways to farm gel, right? Does it require that I use statues? Pretty sure I haven't been saving any of those. Is there another way? Please let me know in the comments. I'm too lazy to Google it. During the slime rain, I also realized it was a windy day, and I've been totally forgetting to kill sand elementals and ice golems. A few frost feathers would be nice, and getting the fragments would also be good, but it wasn't raining, so I went to the desert. There isn't a whole lot I really need from them, but I haven't done this at all yet, so I took down a sand elemental and then decided to return to the dungeon. I kind of wanted to farm the sand elementals more, but yeah, there just wasn't anything I really needed or wanted from the fragments. So the rest of the month was spent adding to the dungeon build. I spent a good amount of time on it, and yet I didn't really get close to finishing it at all. I may have to put Plantera and Golem off for a few weeks next month, which just feels weird. But I want this build to be done. I need to mine for chlorophyte and gather life fruit, and I should also beat the Old One's army enough to have the defender medals I need for a 3rd phase staff. This month felt really good. It may very well be the first time where the month came to a close and I felt as though I needed more time. As I just mentioned, there's still plenty of things I still need to do, and now that I think of it, I also need to create an arena for Plantera. I have expected hard mode to be a bit duller than pre-hard mode because most of the initial grinding was over, but the opposite is proving more true, or just true, whatever. Maybe it's just because hard mode has more things to collect, or maybe it's just I've been enjoying building a whole lot more than I ever have. And if that's the case, then this challenge has been such a blessing since I never really enjoyed building. Still can't say it's my favorite thing in the world, but I'm definitely a lot more happy to do it. Though the dungeon build might be a little too big for me, but I guess I'm committed to it now. Hopefully next month I'll have time to defeat Plantera. Who knows, maybe I'll just barely have time to pencil them in next month. Hey guys, I'm actually officially partnering with a service called Boosteroid. Boosteroid is an online gaming platform that allows you to play, well, let's just say a lot of games. I couldn't find an actual definitive number. But it lets you play these games over the cloud, and it's not another Xbox Game Pass kind of thing. Rather, Boosteroid allows you to play the games you already own over the cloud. This means they won't take up space on your computer's hard drive, and you don't need the latest in gaming technology just to run them. The Terraria footage you've been watching I recorded while testing out the service, so you can see for yourself how much you like the performance. This footage was even captured while at an airport on my MacBook, and it's still doing pretty well, I dare say. You should know, though, that you are only allowed to play games you already own on Steam, Epic Games Store, or others, and you can only play the game if they own the rights to the game on the same platform. For example, the game Control is in their library, but only the version from the Epic Store, so I can't use Boosteroid to play my Steam copy of Control. I've added a link in the description with their game library, so you can see if they have games you'd like to play. Just be sure you own the right copy from the right store. You also can't currently play Team Mod Loader at the moment, which is unfortunate, but I've talked with them and we'll see if it can be added in the future. I would also highly recommend that you download their application as opposed to using the web browser version of their service, because I found that the web browser one had some issues with the mouse, at least while I was playing Terraria. So especially if you're playing Terraria, definitely download the application version. Plus, the application version will also remember the games that you've downloaded, while the web browser one will require you to re-download the game every time you launch it, or at least in my experience, that's what it did. So do be sure to download the application, as you'll have a much better experience. But be sure to check them out. Maybe they can let you play some of the latest AAA games on your potato of a PC, and be sure to use the affiliate link below, as it helps out the channel a lot.